This former Catholic testimony contains a detail that will immediately set off alarm bells for any Catholic watching. Do you all remember MJ the Baptist from last week, or I guess now he's going by Iron and Altar? Last week I made a video responding to him, and in that video I mentioned that he had accused me of making ad hominem attacks and said if I did it again, he'd block me. Well, I want you all to go back and watch that video, and you'll notice I never made any ad hominem attacks, and he blocked me anyway. Now, could I have made comments about his goofy hair? Sure. Could I have made comments about his mother dressing him funny? Absolutely. But I didn't do either of those things because I am the bigger man. And before somebody clips that out of context, that is exactly what an ad hominem attack is, attacking the person instead of the argument. So let's talk about his argument.
The main reason why I left Roman Catholicism is because when you learn what they teach and then you just don't believe it and you take it to their very own historians, the Roman Catholic historians, it doesn't line up with what they teach you in the Roman Catholicism. And the whole reason why I wanted to become a Catholic is so I can marry my wife in a Catholic church. To marry in a Catholic church, you have to be a Roman Catholic. So this is why I was going through this. But then I started asking questions along the way, be like, hey, this is not what your historians say. This is not what your encyclopedia says. Why are we not telling the truth? They got pissed off. They wouldn't even allow the priest to marry me and my wife. We had to have a deacon because I kept questioning why are they teaching stuff that goes against the catechism or their encyclopedia or their very own teachings of their own popes.
Right out of the gate, something caught my attention. MJ says he became Catholic because he wanted to marry his wife in the Catholic Church. And to marry in the Catholic Church, you have to become Catholic. No, you don't. That is simply not true. A Catholic can marry a Protestant, a Catholic can marry a non-Catholic Christian. With proper permissions, a Catholic can even marry non-Christians. This happens literally every day throughout the world, so I immediately have questions, because either MJ was given very unusual information or the details are missing from his story. And there's something important because he repeatedly presents this as part of his testimony for why he left Catholicism. But if one of the foundational details is inaccurate, then that raises questions about the rest of his story. Then he says that they wouldn't allow the priest to marry him and his wife, so a deacon performed the wedding instead. And again, that's strange because deacons regularly witness marriages, especially when one party is Catholic and the other is Protestant. And that's incredibly common. A priest is not required in every situation, so notice what keeps happening here. Facts are being presented in a way that sounds suspicious until you actually know how Catholic practice works. Then the story becomes a lot less dramatic. And this is something I want everyone to think about. If you're investigating Catholicism, don't just ask, did someone leave the church? Ask why, because people leave churches for all kinds of reasons. People leave Baptist churches, Methodist churches, Catholic churches, Orthodox churches. The question is not whether someone left. The question is whether their reasons are valid. If person says, I left because Catholics teach X and Catholics don't actually teach X, then the testimony loses credibility. Truth matters more than testimonials because a testimony can be sincere and can still be mistaken.
Don't worry, I'll give you an update on what it says. It basically says, we don't know the order of the popes because it was a later invention, meaning Peter didn't know that he was a pope. Peter didn't know that he was the bishop over all the bishops. This is a later development by the Roman Catholics. Oh, it gets better. Same book, the Catholic Encyclopedia. Here's the list of all the different ways the popes are in order from Peter on. You have at least 6 different orders.
Now we get to the Pope argument. MJ says that the Catholic Encyclopedia discusses uncertainty regarding some early succession lists and therefore the papacy is a later invention. But that's not what follows. The existence of differing succession lists does not prove that there was no Bishop of Rome. It proves historians are debating details about extremely early historical records. Those are two completely different claims. Let's put it another way. If historians disagree on the exact order of a few early governors of a Roman province, that does not prove that the province never existed. Of course it doesn't. The office and the office holder are two separate questions. And here's where the argument really gets dangerous for Protestants, because if disagreement among historians disproves a doctrine, then Protestantism is in serious trouble. Baptism, communion, church government, predestination, eternal security, spiritual gifts, women pastors, faith alone, you name it, Protestants disagree on virtually every major theological issue. So disagreement cannot be the standard for determining truth.
Meaning they don't have a true order, which means their sources. Trust me, bro. Back to the first picture, I just want to point up right here where it says, and St. Jerome, which is one of their Patreon saints, it's like their go-to dude, tells us in his time, most of the Latins held that Clement was the immediate successor of the Apostle Peter. That's weird. Goes on to say St. Jerome himself in several other places follows this opinion, means he believed that Clement was number 1, but later on changed his opinion to the 4th pope under pressure of the pope at that time. And this is one of the reasons why I left Catholicism. If your very foundation, the bedrock of your religion is not even solid, it's not from God. It's from, trust me, bro.
Then MJ brings up St. Jerome, and honestly, this one surprises me because it accidentally hurts his own position. He says Jerome believed Clement succeeded Peter directly and then later changed his opinion. Okay. And Catholics don't believe Jerome was infallible. Jerome is a saint. Jerome is a doctor of the church. Jerome is not the magisterium. Catholics have never taught that every church father got every historical question correct. In fact, the fathers disagree with each other at times. Who cares? What matters is the consistent teaching of the church. And when we look at the early church, what do we find? We find that the Church of Rome exercising authority remarkably early. Around 96 AD, Pope Clement writes to Corinth and intervenes in another church's dispute, not his local parish, not his local diocese, another church hundreds of miles away. And it's the Corinthians, and that's significant. St. Irenaeus wrote, with this church, because of its superior origin, all the churches must agree. St. Ignatius of Antioch referred to the Roman church as the one that presides in love. St. Cyprian called Rome the chair of Peter. St. Augustine famously said, Rome has spoken, the matter is settled. Now, someone may disagree with these fathers, fine, but let's stop pretending that the papacy appeared out of nowhere. The historical evidence simply doesn't support that claim. And most importantly, the papacy is not built on succession lists. It's built on scripture. Matthew 16, 18, and 19, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. Luke 22, 31 to 32, Jesus specifically prays for Peter and commands him to strengthen the brethren. John 21, 15 to 17, feed my sheep. Acts 1 shows apostolic offices continuing after the death of Judas. Acts 15 shows the church authority resolving disputes. 2 Thessalonians 2:15 commands Christians to hold fast to both written and oral traditions. The Catholic understanding isn't based on one historical document. It's based on the totality of scripture and history together. The Catechism teaches this in paragraphs 552, 881, 882, 861 regarding Peter's unique role in apostolic succession. The Church has never claimed that every historical detail is perfectly preserved. The Church claims Christ established a visible church with real authority that continues through history. Those are not the same thing. And honestly, that's where I think MJ's argument ultimately falls apart. The argument boils down to this: I found disagreements among historians, therefore Catholicism is false. But that standard destroys every Christian denomination, every historical movement, and every academic discipline. Every church. The real question is not whether Christians have debated historical details. Of course they have. The real question is this: did Christ establish a visible church with authority, or did he leave every believer to become his own final authority? Because when I read the New Testament, I don't see Jesus founding thousands of competing denominations. I see him founding one church, a church with shepherds, authority, and succession, a church that he promised the gates of hell would not overcome. So let me ask you this: if disagreement among historians is enough to disprove the Catholic Church, why isn't disagreement among Protestant pastors enough to disprove Protestantism? Thank you for watching. God bless.